Hello, and welcome to Anime Audio Commentary. Today I'll be commenting on Episode 6 of Spy Family Season 2. If you'd like to watch along, then start watching now. So curiously, the first thing we do is we sort of focus on Yor's coworkers. And this is sort of like a running theme I've noticed with them in that all three of them seem to be insanely jealous of Yor. And some of it is they don't quite know the whole situation, but as outsiders looking in, Yor's dealing with important clients on a luxury cruise liner. They don't understand that she's really in a life or death situation. Now back on the boat, the important thing to remember here is that the last episode left off with the disguise seemingly being punctured. Maybe the would-be assassins can't recognize their target by sight, but, they know like a general description, they know what room she's in, so whether or not Yor knows it, and, we're pretty darn sure she doesn't know it. The situation is decidedly not good. I mean, as things are, they're eating in a fancy restaurant, which, affords some degree of safety. Why would assassins attack in, like, a big, busy restaurant? I mean, I think that's kind of simplistic. Obviously, they probably wouldn't attack guns blazing, but I feel like poison would work in a situation like that reasonably well. I mean, it's kind of moot in any case, Yor made it back to the room all safe and sound, and seemingly the room has remained undisturbed, which, I'm not sure I necessarily buy that, considering the assassins had narrowed down the room before. So Yor's doing some big thinking here. She has a reasonable idea of understanding when the assassins will strike, and with that in mind, there's only so tense she has to be. But of course, she doesn't know that the disguise is already sort of blown. And just to put a fine point on everything, we have to remember that there is a little child involved, and if things heat up to any degree at all, really, like, that's not a good environment for a child to be in. So I think this bit's a little telling right here, the woman telling Yor that she doesn't really seem to belong to the underworld. Sure, she might be an assassin and one with a sterling reputation, but I feel like it's almost a way of saying that Yor's wasting her life being an assassin. She has a family. Like, that should be more important, And the woman's even saying, don't you want to spend time with your family and all that? And, truth be told, Yor was sort of going into this on the understanding that they would not be anywhere near here, but, fate intervened. Oh dear. Poor Anya. I can understand her situation. Being a kid in an ostensibly fancy restaurant. If the food's really good, you just want to eat. But, it doesn't exactly mesh well with manners. Alright, yeah, that's not good that people are being so open with, his name, Mr. Grey, whether that's a pseudonym or what. Now I'm wondering who exactly those two guys are, because they don't seem like they would be assassins or really in the know or anything at all. I mean, I guess it's good for everybody that the director has a good head on his shoulders. Sure, he's pretending to be old and forgetful, but he's definitely paying attention here. This guy's following them and not especially subtle. Ooh. That was a crispy sound. I don't think arms are supposed to bend that way. I mean, I guess good on the director for being really direct and to the point here, Answer the questions or you start losing limbs. And, I can't necessarily blame this guy for talking. He's probably in a whole lot of pain here, but, alright, that's pushing it a little too far, like, you told the guy yes or no questions, and then you don't ask him a yes or no question, like, I recognize you don't necessarily want to ingratiate yourself to the assassin, but I feel like, if you want information, you at least have to play fair when you're snapping his joints. So, here's the big issue. This guy's letting it slip that their cover's entirely blown. Of course, that probably doesn't bode very well for, his life. I mean, we can only assume the director snapped his neck before tossing him overboard. I mean, whether he did or not, the guy has 2 broken arms and a broken leg. He's not going to be swimming very well. Yeah. That's not particularly subtle on the director's part, but, I mean, if this guy, like, if he's on, I guess, the verge of being assassinated, there's a time and a place for subtlety, and I feel like this isn't it. Oh, dear. So it seems like everybody's been sort of screwing the pooch here. He made a call to his parents, which probably shouldn't have done. And his wife, unbeknownst to the director, took a little sojourn to the surface. Or to the outer deck, I guess you'd call it. In both cases, it's probably stuff you shouldn't be doing if you're trying to keep a low profile. So, this really throws a monkey wrench into things. The assassins aren't going to wait until it's convenient. They're just gonna start attacking right now. And hopefully Yor has the good instincts to recognize that this is in all likelihood, possibly not the director. I feel like he wouldn't wait and just knock on the door if this were truly life and death. So, it is room service, which isn't necessarily a bad sign. Unless, of course, you didn't order room service, in which case it's a very bad sign. I feel like this is almost a sort of, maybe not a stereotype, but something that frequently happens, an assassin disguised as room service. I mean, it works, just sort of like having a disguise that gets rid of scrutiny. Wow. Okay, so things aren't exactly like super gory, but good lord. I mean, that guy was like stabbed right through the head. Holy cow. Like, the darts to the hand, like, that's one thing. Like, I stabbed myself in the hand recently, and that hurt a fair bit, but like, man, right through the head. Because, like, I know, like, the temple in your skull, that's sort of like the weakest part, structurally speaking, so if anything's gonna puncture, it would do it through there, but like, ugh. So I feel like, just in aggregate, everything is that much more difficult now because there are bullet holes and other damage. Like, that's not really something you can hide. And I mean, sure, the director's saying, like, oh, Mr. and Mrs. Gray got into a bit of a physical altercation. But, that doesn't really explain bullet holes. So, I guess the trouble is, even though they did manage to kill the one assassin, this sort of confirms for everybody else that they're on the right track here. And, I'd imagine that even though some of these guys seem to be working together, they're not exactly a team, if that makes any sense. Or they're not too concerned with everybody making it out alive, I mean, this guy's even saying, why don't we work together? As if that wasn't their modus operandi before. Yeah, now he just said, no infighting, but I feel like, that was kind of deserved. That's, I feel like that's a really good way to draw down a lot of heat. Just let's kill every woman with a baby on the ship and eventually we'll hit the target, but, yeah, there is something about that lacks, like, a professional elegance. If you take pride in your profession, you should endeavor to do a good job. And it's kind of incongruous to say that about assassination work, but I guess it does apply. Okay, so when the director said put on these masks, I was thinking something else, but it seems as though there just so happens to be a masquerade ball, which, incidentally, would make for a pretty good hiding place. At the same time, I feel like, assassins wouldn't have too hard a time sneaking into one either. And I guess the tricky part is, making sure you know where everyone is. So it turns out maybe the masquerade ball wasn't a great idea. Because on the one hand, they are here, but it seems as though there are assassins here. Yor is aware. So I guess the trick here is that she needs to intercept the assassins and neutralize them as stealthily as possible so as not to cause a commotion. In all likelihood that means she has to avoid killing them, but sometimes that's easier said than done. This is one of those things where Yor's just, insanely superhuman. Hurling, like, the button from a suit jacket with such violent force that it knocks the guy out. I feel like if it was hurled hard enough to do that, it would have just, punctured the guy or something. But, Yeah, that's probably better than, like, tearing one of his arms out of its socket or something like that. Considerably more stealthy. How very coy of her, like, oh, are you asking me to dance here? I'll, crush your hands. It's interesting that she sort of has time to flirt, I am a married woman after all, Man, like that's, it's gotta be rather painful having your hands crushed like that. Thinking about it, I rather enjoy having my hands. I don't think that's a controversial statement. So while all this is going on, Lloyd and Anya, they're just doing, usual sort of mundane stuff. Anya, at this point, doesn't really know what's going on. She knows that Yor's up to something related to her work, and Lloyd's sharp enough to know that there's all sorts of wiretaps around, but, we're in this weird sort of superposition where nobody exactly knows what everybody else is doing. So, of course, for Lloyd, there's another wrinkle. Anya's doing what kids are wont to do, and Lloyd has the extra consideration of ensuring Operation Strix goes off without a hitch, so, for the sake of the mission, he might have to forego what would otherwise be good parenting. And Anya, I guess, she can read minds, so she knows that, hey, maybe I better, dial it down a bit. But at the same time now, she's also learning about the assassination plot and all that. Mr. Sicklin Shane Barnaby here, he's a pretty tough customer. He's not to be messed with. He doesn't want to team up with anyone. He wants the whole thing for himself. And just the way this guy is drawn, he is rather unsettling. And worst of all, like, he's sighted Yor and his target, so things are bad. Cause what happens if Lloyd figures out what's going on? It pains me to say it, but I think this joke was better in manga form. But I do like that in Lloyd's mind, the fact that Yor hates frogs is one bridge too far. The assassination stuff maybe he could cope with, but hating frogs? Yeah, that's a divorce. But the tricky thing is that, Anya feels the need to somehow help, but also prevent Lloyd from seeing what's going on. It's making me think here, because, I feel like kids... I don't know. I'm trying to articulate what I'm thinking here. This isn't something like a kid should have to deal with, but at the same time, she's the only one who truly knows what's going on. Of course, Lloyd, the poor guy, he entirely misunderstands the situation. He thinks this is just, sort of like usual child-rearing stuff, and he needs to ensure that Operation Strix goes smoothly. I think he's also attributing a little too much intelligence to the handler, as if she could have possibly foreseen that Anya would need a vacation. So it would seem as though this is the opportunity, just sort of stick Lloyd with this saleswoman. And while that's going on, Anya can take advantage of that to do something to help. Of course, it is interesting that Anya somehow produces the right sort of cryptic remark to say to just, twist the knife and get Lloyd to do what she wants. Anya's often presented as sort of stupid, for want of a better term, but I feel like that's not really a fair assessment. She is younger than her peers, but at the same time, I feel like this is definite evidence of a cunning intelligence here. And you know what? I think she might be getting a little carried away, Hey, Papa, try on all this cool stuff and, we'll see what happens. So the question now is, what exactly can Anya do? I mean, incidentally, nothing. Lloyd Forger, being the master of disguise, can change instantly. Or near instantly, but, I feel like this is a rather long diversion from what is otherwise, an interesting fight. I take it back, Sickle and Chain, Barnaby, and Yor are just sort of walking towards each other like Jotaro and Dio. And they're just sort of walking past each other. I mean, it was all a feint, more or less, on Barnaby's part. So I guess the question is, now that combat has been initiated, what's Yor gonna do about it? Surely she has to make short work of this guy, seeing as how they're in public. Alright, well that's it for this episode. If you've enjoyed it, then by all means, tune in for the next one. See you, Space Cowboy.